Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in here on this Tuesday of Tennessee week as the Gamecocks prepare to travel to Knoxville this weekend, Neyland Stadium, to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. I see Bruin Nation, Bryce, Chase, Travie, Jacob, Peyton, Brendan M, Ethan, what's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. That is where your questions will be answered, guys. In case you missed it, no more Q&A Power Hour. The only questions we will be taking Monday through Thursday are those submitted through the TDC Questions channel in the Big Cock Club Discord and or via Super Chat on YouTube. Of course, guys, on Friday, we will have our Friday mailbag episode where in our first hour, we'll do nothing but take your questions, comments, and calls on our phone lines at 843 790-3377. You can also submit your questions via text during the week, and we'll get to those on Friday as well. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. We have got a jam-packed show for you here on this Tuesday. A bit of a change-up, though. Normally, we have J.C. Sherbert on Tuesdays. Hit me up this morning. He is dealing with a bit of a stomach bug, a bit of a flu or something going on. So J.C. is going to rest, recover. We're going to have him on tomorrow. Instead, guys, today we will have our good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. So we're pulling a bit of the switcheroo here on this Tuesday, switching our guests Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively, if you will. But Chris Marler will join us to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, everything in between. And then tomorrow we'll get J.C. Sherbert on the show, of course, to break down everything that happened on Saturday against Mississippi State and look forward to, most importantly, this weekend in Knoxville as the Gamecocks take on Tennessee in a big game, night game under the lights at Neyland Stadium. Going to be a ton of fun, guys. Again, appreciate you all tuning in on today's show. Again, we're talking SEC power rankings. We're diving into my best bets of the weekend. Had a really good week 4, trying to carry that momentum over. And finally, we're talking keys to victory for Saturday's game, guys. As I mentioned to you last week, with the change of schedule, right, with the Friday mailbag show happening, we have moved up all of our pregame content. So we're going to start talking the weekend much earlier than we used to. Instead of waiting until Wednesday to dive into game week stuff, we're getting right into it today. Again, talking keys to victory against Tennessee. And that'll get the ball rolling, guys. Tomorrow, of course, we'll get in a position to comparison. We'll start talking top storylines, key matchups. And then Thursday will be prediction day. I'll lock in my picks for the SEC. And, of course, guys, the Gamecocks taking on Tennessee and every single other South Carolina game. We'll lock those in on Thursdays as well. So, again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Really exciting stuff. Of course, guys, Shane Beamer is speaking to the media today at 1:30. We will not be carrying that here, but we will have full coverage of all of his comments ahead of Saturday's game. Just stay tuned, guys, to social media. Content, of course, bleeding out of the eyeballs. With that being said, guys, we kick the show off in style. We're talking SEC power rankings entering week 5 of the 2023 college football season. I want to start by saying this. Admittedly, and I knew it, I could feel it when I was doing it, but admittedly last week when we dropped our SEC power rankings, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Looking back, I have no regrets, but I think there was some overreaction from yours truly. So my promise to you moving forward is this. I'm going to do my very best, not that I did not do so before, but my very best to keep things in perspective and not overreact to things we see on a week in, week out basis. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be a movement That's not to say there's not going to be changes, of course, on a weekly basis based off what these teams do, win, lose, or what have you. But I looked back at last week's power rankings and I said, you know what, Chris? Maybe you pulled the trigger a little bit too much on some of these. Maybe you went overboard, is what I should say, on some of these rankings. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Without further ado, guys, we get into it. We start at number 14 and something that has not changed. The Vanderbilt Commodores still reside in the cellar in the 14 spot, guys, losing to Kentucky over the weekend. And, Clark Lee's squad, A.J. Swan, he begins to, combat the issues that are Vanderbilt football. Man, A.J. Swan, 3 interceptions on the day. Vandy, what is there really to say? A game that none of us expected Vanderbilt to win. There will be opportunities for Vandy throughout the SEC schedule. But I think at this point, guys, if Vanderbilt hits the over 3.5 on their win total, it's going to be a successful season. I thought, you saw them punch back and jab back and give Kentucky some anxious moments in that third quarter, but we're really never in that football game. We expected Kentucky to get their revenge in Nashville, and they did so. And so for that, Vanderbilt holds on to the 14 spot. And unless Vandy pulls an upset or two, I don't see them getting out of this spot. At number 13, I've got the Auburn Tigers. And one of the biggest reasons, guys, I have them this low is the struggles offensively. I mean, it is really, truly a problem on that side of the football for Hugh Freeze. And we heard him over the summer talking about pleading with his fan base for patience. Please have patience with us as we figure this thing out. I think offensively is most where he was talking about, because defensively in the secondary, they're pretty good. But until Hugh Freeze gets his quarterback, they're going to have problems, guys. They're going to have struggles. They're going to have issues. And I just don't know if there's really an answer in that quarterback room right now with Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford and whoever the other guy is that they played. I just don't know that they really have an answer at the quarterback position. So I think for Auburn this year, and of course it gets no easier, guys, they got to go they host the Georgia Bulldogs, but still have to take on the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Weirdly enough, the spread in that game is only 14.5. So it makes you wonder, Hugh Freeze on the home field, right? Weird things happen at Jordan-Hare, but I got a hard time believing it's going to happen, man. And Auburn, I think, until they get things going offensively, how I felt about Auburn in the preseason is kind of what I see them as right now. A team that, our friend Jake Crane and others in Auburn country felt like maybe an 8-win or, God forbid, achieving more than that was possible in year 1 of Hugh Freeze. And maybe it still is. But I've always just viewed them as, hey, it's year 1 of a new head coach. Get to 6-6. Get to bowl eligibility. That would be a success on the Plains in year 1 of Hugh Freeze. Number 12, I've got the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and I've got State jumping up 1 spot after their loss to South Carolina, and it's simply because of the quarterback position and Will Rogers. And you get him going, all of a sudden, I think the outlook on your season can change and change greatly. There is no shame, guys, losing on the road in the SEC. There's no shame in going into a hostile environment as an underdog and losing. And I think that if you're Mississippi State, although it came in a loss, and I know the running game got shut down, but I think there's positives to take away from that game. Like when you have your quarterback and Will Rogers go off the way he did, and Kevin Barbay and company are able to show, hey, we're going to be able to push the right buttons here to get the best of Will Rogers and have him shine like he's done so many times in his career at Mississippi State. I think that is a positive. Now, again, it gets no easier for them. They host Alabama this weekend, and I think what's a really, really intriguing game in Starkville. And I know Mississippi State fans are not going to want to hear that. They're not going to be happy with a 6-6 season, or heck, maybe even 7-5 because of what Mike Leach is building. But State fans, you got to accept Mike Leach is no longer there, guys. Mike Leach is no longer gracing the sidelines. It is Zach Arnett's job. It is Zach Arnett's football team. It is Zach Arnett's program. And you got to get with that at least for 2023. So, that being said, I think there's some positive signs, encouraging signs if you're a Bulldogs fan when you see the way Will Rogers played. And I think it gives you hope and it's promise for what the rest of the season can be. Because you look across college football, guys, it's all about offense and it's all about getting a hot quarterback. And we've talked about this a lot. When and where you play teams and is your quarterback hot or not, that's what a lot of these games are going to come down to. And so you look at a game like in Alabama, you look down the road, Ole Miss, LSU, or excuse me, they already played LSU, but Ole Miss, the rest of these games. If you have Will Rogers playing at that level, all of a sudden, you feel a little bit better about your prospects of having a really good season, guys. At number 11, the Gamecocks, Week 5 opponent. I've got the Tennessee Volunteers. Is Tennessee much more capable of this number 11 ranking? Absolutely. I still think Tennessee has a lot of talent. I think offensively, Joe Milton, the array of weapons on the outside, the running game, if you will. And I think defensively, still in that front seven, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about with Tennessee. But Tennessee has just not played well, guys. Tennessee has just not, they've done nothing really all that impressive to this point. And they've got a great opportunity on Saturday night against the Gamecocks. But Joe Milton's just been kind of okay. You know, I think this is another case of, I don't think Joe Milton's been terrible. Like, you look at the numbers, guys, and again, Tennessee's lost one football game. And you look back at that game and like, was it really Joe Milton's fault they lost? Or was it the fact that Tennessee got dominated in the trenches? I mean, I don't think Joe Milton's been that bad, but he's been bad when you compare him to what Hendon Hooker was. And I think that's the tough thing that Tennessee fans are having a really, really difficult time adjusting to. That's the thing that they can't get over right now. But I have Tennessee at this slot because of just how they've played. It hasn't been flashy. It hasn't been sexy. It hasn't been, and who have they beaten? I mean, Tennessee sits 3-1 right now, but wins over Virginia, Austin Peay, and a UTSA team that was out there starting quarterback. So I just still don't really know what Tennessee is right now. I don't know. We've seen them in one Power 5 game, or excuse me, two, Virginia, if you want to count them. Heck, I almost count them as FCS at this point. But we've seen Tennessee in one SEC game that was at Florida, and they got shellacked for the most part. So big opportunity for the Vols this weekend. 11 is where I currently have them slotted. At number 10, there will be probably some debate here, but I've got the Arkansas Razorbacks. And guys, the reason I've got Arkansas ahead of Tennessee is quarterback play. I still believe Arkansas has arguably, we'll just say, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC in KJ Jefferson. I thought it was a valiant effort what he and that team did at LSU, giving the Tigers everything they wanted and then some. It goes beyond the field of play, though, what Arkansas is dealing with right now, guys. You heard Sam Pittman talking about deleting his Twitter and deleting his social media and the hatred that's being flung at the Hogs and the players and the coaches. And it's a bit of a mess down there in Fayetteville right now. It really is. It's a mess in Hog Nation. People are upset, and there's another big-time test and what feels like a tipping point kind of game, right, for Arkansas this weekend when they take on Texas A&M in Arlington. That series, Arkansas, for whatever reason, has just not been able to win that football game. They've just not been able to beat Texas A&M. They got to get Rocket Sanders back. And I think Arkansas fans have just got to take a second, take a deep breath, let the season play out. Because things are getting very, very hostile, it seems, right now in Hog Nation. Arkansas, number 10 in our rankings. At number 9, and this is where a lot of the movement, guys, when I talked about last week, maybe some of the overreactions from yours truly, or slotting these teams, right? Just pulling the trigger a little bit too quick. I got Florida number 9, right? I had them at number 5, and they won. So why would I drop them down 4 spots? Well, guys, yes, Florida took down Tennessee in a big night game. That was a huge win. They looked good doing it. But I think Florida against Charlotte sort of came back down to earth and showed us all what they really are, right? And these teams, admittedly, guys, are so hard to figure out because I think on any given night, a home team at night in their stadium with the momentum, with the crowd support, can go out and play a fantastic ball game. I think any given night that could happen. But is that really who they are, or is that football team riding the momentum of the crowd and the environment, the electricity, if you will? So I don't know that Florida is quite as good as what we saw against Tennessee. I'm not saying they're as bad as what we saw against Charlotte. I think that defense is for real. I think that defense will travel, and they got a big game against Kentucky this weekend. But I got to see the consistency from the Gators. Like following up that big Tennessee win with a 22-7 win over Charlotte, it's less than promising. And so, Billy Napier in year 2 got a young program handling success and handling prosperity is something that Florida has to prove they know how to handle. And going out there and having that kind of performance against a Charlotte team that is not very good, let's call it for what it is. They got a notable head coach, but they're not very good. Having that kind of performance, it leaves you wondering. It leaves you scratching your head. So I think Florida, we had them, I think, vaulted in the top 5. That's not where they belong. Bottom line, Florida is a middle-of-the-pack SEC team like many others, and that's okay. But let's not make them more than what they are just because they took down Tennessee in a night game in a sold-out swamp when the stars seemed to align. At number 8, I've got South Carolina staying right in that 8 position. And one of the biggest reasons is this, guys. I'm not diminishing the win that just took place, but the Gamecocks took down the 13th in our SEC power rankings last week, Mississippi State Bulldogs. A game in which you were favored at home. You were supposed to win. And I think South Carolina is still a team, guys, that when you got a quarterback playing like Spencer Rattler, you got a chance in every single ball game you play. When you got a wide receiver playing like Xavier Legette, guys, you got a chance in every single ball game you play. And if you keep that running game going with Mario Anderson, if you've actually found a running game and you can carry that on a week-in, week-out basis, well, then you're really cooking offensively. But now, for the first time in the Shane Beamer era, the defense looks to be a real liability. And I will say to that point, though, give credit. I think the Gamecocks are actually much better, at least thus far, against the run this season. But make no mistake, this is not a good defense. Top to bottom, this is not a good South Carolina defense. And I know what the schedule says, and I understand the difficulty of the opponents played, the quarterbacks, what have you, but I'm selling my stock on Clayton White's defense. I think South Carolina is going to have to continue to outscore opponents to win. That's not to say the defense is not going to make a big play here and there and keep Carolina in games, and heck, maybe even do enough to win a ball game. But the secondary is suspect. The linebacker play is average. And the defensive front, give them credit, has been much more active over the last 2 weeks. But I still have my questions. All that to say, in a crowded middle of the pack, the Gamecocks have something that many of these other teams wish they had. That is arguably the best quarterback in the SEC. With the way Spencer Rattler is playing right now, you got to like your chances if you're the Gamecocks. And But for right now, I just, there's more opportunities for South Carolina to jump up this list. You got a big one in Neyland this weekend. But right now, again, I go back to the full body of work. 2-2 with 2 wins over FCS Furman and bottom of the barrel Mississippi State. The opportunity to move up these rankings is coming very soon for South Carolina, but it's not time to do so yet. 8 is the correct ranking for them at this point. At number 7, I've got the Texas A&M Aggies. A dominating win over the Auburn Tigers. And I know, again, a team in Auburn that we have 13th in this power poll, in these power rankings this week. But I think Texas A&M, the most encouraging thing, guys, was defensively just the pure and utter domination in that football game, right? Defense was the thing that gave them the problem against Miami, and that is the reason they lost. I think we all believe the offense is going to be fine with Bobby Petrino. Things seem to be clicking, even if Connor Wegman can't go. What a luxury it is to have a backup like Max Johnson who can come in, throw a pair of touchdowns, and win you a football game. So, Texas A&M is a football team that they're still not perfect. But folks will ask, Chris, why is A&M ahead of South Carolina? Call me crazy if you like, but when I look at the body of work, when I look at these two football teams, give me the football team that's been recruiting at a top 5 level and has talent stacked top to bottom, and it's starting to click over the team in South Carolina that I still feel like at this point Shane Beamer is squeezing blood out of a rock in different parts of the football team and getting the absolute most out of the limited talent that he has. So, Texas A&M right now, I've got them in the 7 spot, and a big, big game this weekend to stay in that spot or move up as they take on Arkansas in Arlington. At number 6, I've got the Ole Miss Rebels, guys. Not a big drop-off for Ole Miss here. Not a big drop-off for Ole Miss. This is more so due to the respect that I have for Alabama. And I know, I sound like a hypocrite, but I'm going to get there in just a second. Going on the road to Tuscaloosa, I never expected Ole Miss to get that W. I never expected Ole Miss to go into Bryant-Denny Stadium and take down the great Nick Saban, right? I think it's going to take more than that, right? It's going to take more than that to knock Nick Saban off his perch and really, truly take down the beast of the West, if you will. And I think the question this week now has Ole Miss hit their ceiling under Lane Kiffin, right? Is there any more Lane Kiffin can do at Ole Miss? And I think the answer, guys, it might be no. I think, honestly, like a 9-win ceiling, Lane Kiffin might have hit that. That might be the ceiling at Ole Miss. But that's still good enough, I think, to be considered a top half of the SEC team. I still like Jackson Dart a lot. I still like Quinshon Judkins. They've got to get him going. There's no question. They got to get him going. They got to get those weapons going on the outside as well. Defensively, I didn't think Ole Miss was terrible in that football game. I think Ole Miss simply, guys, just missed their opportunities. They had opportunities in that football game to stay in it with Bama, maybe even win the football game, just were not able to take advantage. I don't think that one game defines Ole Miss. I can name 10 or 11 other SEC teams that would have lost that game to Alabama on Saturday. So I'm not punishing Ole Miss to the level in which I'm sure some folks think I should. I'm still bullish on Ole Miss, and that's why they're remaining in the 6th spot for me. At number 5, I got the Kentucky Wildcats, man. And I know they haven't looked great. We're going to find out a lot more this weekend, right? We're going to find out a lot more because Kentucky's a team that the way they're winning is not impressing people. Really sloppy against lesser than competition. And even in the Vandy game, right? Even in the Vandy game, there's some statistics out there that would tell some folks that, maybe they're not winning at such a great clip, or that game should have been closer, or what. Guys, you got a hard time convincing me that well, maybe Kentucky shouldn't have won the game when they won by 17 points, right? That's a pretty tough argument to sell to me. But guys, all Kentucky does is keep winning. They're 4-0. How are you going to bump a team down substantially that just continues to win? And so this is a show me weekend for Kentucky. Taking on Florida, this is a show me weekend, no doubt. This is a weekend in which, okay, if you're actually the team, Kentucky, that we think you are, with Barry and Brown and Dane Key on the outside and, you know, all these transfer portal additions you picked up, Devin Leary out of the portal at the quarterback position, like this is the weekend to show it. And so as we get into SEC play, right, we really pick things up in conference play. That's the case for a lot of these teams. But until they lose, guys, I cannot move Kentucky down. All they do is win. Why should Kentucky be punished for beating the teams on their schedule? You want to argue the schedule's laughable? You want to argue that, you know, the schedule is BS and it's unfair that, well, that's an argument we can have. But Kentucky's 4-0. They were in the top half of my rankings to start the year. Until they lose, guys, I'm not bumping them out. And I'm still bullish on Kentucky, admittedly, and still think they can be one of the best teams in the SEC East. Speaking of giving credit where credit's due, number 4, I've got the Missouri Tigers. Many folks will look at this and scoff, but guys, if anybody deserves it, it's Missouri. They've got a top 25 win on their resume. They just took down Memphis, and they sit undefeated. And guess what? They've got Vandy this weekend. Missouri is probably going to be 5-0 when LSU comes to town. At some point, guys, you have to give credit. And I know, you know, it's weird with Missouri. I've been thinking about this, guys, admittedly. Trying to figure out why SEC fan bases not want to give Missouri credit? Like at some point, there's a couple of SEC fan bases out there who have these losing streaks to Mizzou. And Missouri has gotten the better of their program more often than not over the last couple of years. Missouri has been in more SEC championships than some of the SEC fan bases out there that undermine them. I don't really understand where the disrespect comes from. Is it because they're in the Midwest? Is it because they, you know, are the newest member? Is it because, like, what is it? Is it because their stadium's smaller than some others? Is it because, like, I don't understand why we can't give Missouri credit. Like, I'm someone, guys, I doubted Missouri 2 weeks in a row. They've earned this position. Right now, Missouri's the second best team in the SEC East. Bottom line, point blank, end of conversation. They are. Until proven otherwise, Missouri's the second best team in the SEC East. Is that where they're going to finish? I'm not telling you that. But Brady Cook's playing at a high level. They've got the running game going. Luther Burden is quietly one of the best playmakers in the SEC. And defensively, while they have not been dominant, guys, this is still a veteran defense that's played at a really, really, really high level over the last couple of years. Like, it's all there from Mizzou. And so I don't understand why folks are so skeptical of Missouri. And I was one that was, admittedly, but, I mean, the Tigers have done everything, guys. They've done everything to deserve this. Their resume speaks for it. And I think deservedly so. They sit at number 4 in our rankings. At number 3, this is probably going to be the largest jump or largest movement we will ever have in these power rankings. Because admittedly, guys, I overreacted. Admittedly, guys, I was overzealous in my power rankings last week. I can admit that. I'm a man. Listen, I'm man enough to admit it. I'm man enough to admit when I mess up, when I screw up, when I do wrong. So Alabama and Alabama fans, I apologize to you all. I apologize for overreacting to your poorest performance against South Florida. To be fair, I will say this. With Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner at quarterback, this team is the 12th or 13th best team in the SEC. Like, I would not be surprised if you put Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner as the starting quarterback of this football team. This team probably goes 6-6, maybe 7-5. Like, that's how bad those two guys are. So the bad news is this. If you have to go to them, you're in a world of hurt. But the good news is this. You got somebody else. And his name is Jalen Milroe. And while it was a comedy of errors early on, he steadied the ship. And I think you're seeing the line of scrimmage come together. I think you're seeing Alabama get back to playing the bully ball, right? It's not quite there. And I think when they play these top-tier teams in the SEC, the LSUs of the world, we'll see what happens against Mississippi State. Not saying they're top tier, but I don't think Alabama is going to be this bully ball, what they talked about in the offseason. But, guys, Bama still has one of the best rosters in college football. They've still got one of the best, right? They've still got one of the best rosters in college football. And that was a vintage Alabama win that we saw on Saturday, right? Winning with dominant defense. And here's the thing. The first half, that was where Ole Miss should have gotten them. Because once you let Alabama get some confidence and get their feet back under them and realize, wait a minute, we're Alabama. We're still really, really, really good. We're still really good, right? Once you let that happen, Bama's got the talent to beat anybody. So when you look at these power rankings and where Alabama deserves to be, like I told you guys, the power rankings are devised up of different things. It's not just all about Team A would beat Team B if they played on a neutral field, but that does have a factor. And so you look at all these teams below Bama at 3. Is it fair to say they'd beat every one of them? I mean, I think there's an argument that they would. And so, Alabama fans, Crimson Tide Nation, I apologize for slotting you all so low because admittedly that was overzealous. Admittedly that was probably not even deserved. But we all make mistakes. Alabama, number 3 on my list. At number 2, I've got the LSU Tigers, guys, the Bayou Bengals. Listen, as we said before, I think the days of style points in the SEC are gone. It is about survive and advance. Survive and advance. With the parity that we're seeing in college football, the parity that we're seeing in the SEC, just find a way to win, guys. Just find a way to win. There's no such thing as an ugly win. There's no such thing as it. So, LSU on the home field in a rivalry game, guys, right? I thought this game was going to be a lot closer than folks were giving it credit for. 17.5 was that spread. I thought, you know what? Battle the Golden Boot. Arkansas is going to give them their best shot, and they did. But the bottom line is this. LSU holds on. I think still right now they are the second best team in the SEC. I like what I've seen from them more than what I've seen from Alabama. I know that both have a loss, but right now I still have LSU as my second best team in the SEC. And guys, at number 1, the Georgia Bulldogs. They'll have an opportunity this weekend, guys, to really show folks how good they are. Georgia's going to have an opportunity to remind not just the SEC, but all of college football that they are still the kings of it. Because Georgia, it feels like it's just been kind of cruising through this first month of the season. And I told you guys this in the preseason, like it's a shame that we have to wait so long for these teams to prove themselves. Like, I don't know why so many of these teams love to schedule 3 or 4 non-conference games to open the season. And it's like, we get to October and it's like half these teams, we don't even know what they are. That'll change Saturday, though. Georgia heading to the Plains, going to Auburn. It's going to be a, people 14.5-point spread. Oh, what does Hugh Freeze have in store? I think Georgia has a great opportunity to prove to everyone, offensively, defensively, special teams, across the board, that they're still the kings of the SEC. Ho-hum performance against UAB over the weekend. Some tense moments early, but not really. Georgia pulls away. Carson Beck, very good in that football game. I think you're going to see Georgia get more healthy this week. And I think Georgia is going to be as fired up to play in any game they've had this season, if not more so. But until they get knocked off, guys, as I mentioned, Georgia, not just the kings of the SEC, but the kings of college football as well. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Tuesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Do not forget, guys, we're getting into game day content, game week content today. Just wrapped up the SEC Power Rankings, about to get into our best bets of the weekend. And then after that, keys to victory against the Tennessee Volunteers. We do have a question here in the Big Cock Club Discord, the TDC Questions channel, which is the place to submit your questions during the week. Our friend Elvis says, do you think Mario Anderson has finally earned RB1? Elvis, great question. I would say absolutely 110% yes. I know that Shane Bieber mentioned that Montario Hardesty was the one that decided the running back rotation from week to week. But if Mario Anderson is an RB1 this week, if he's not the one out there taking the first carries, make the change in season because it shows a level of incompetence that I don't want to support. Either way, guys, we keep the conversation rolling. I mentioned this time last week that we had to have a big bounce back weekend, right? Like we had to crush the bookie. We fell to 10-14 on the season. An ugly, ugly record. Folks, I'm happy to say we got the bounce back weekend we needed. 6-2 overall on the weekend to move our overall record to 16-16. Now, we got to keep the positive momentum rolling. And folks, I've got a card for you that's a guaranteed winner. My Week 5 gambling picks, let's get into it. We'll start with Southern Cal taking on the Colorado Buffaloes. Dion's team, boy, they got humbled last weekend, didn't they? I mean, Oregon took Colorado to the woodshed, my friends. And Southern Cal might do the same. That's not what I'm focused on in this game. The total, 73.5. I love the over. Came out at 71. Would have loved it then. I loved it at 73.5. I'd love it at 75. I think there's going to be points, and more points. I think neither team plays defense. I think both quarterbacks are going to flourish. I do think you see Colorado bounce back in a big way. I think Southern Cal is like a 21-point favorite in this game, something like that. I'm not touching the spread, but I think there's going to be a lot of offense in this game, guys. I mean, dude, Colorado is not going to be able to stop Caleb Williams. Like at any point in that football game, they're not going to be able to stop him. I think Shedeur Sanders and company, I think, again, they'll bounce back from that Oregon game. I expect Southern Cal to win, but I think it's going to be offensive fireworks all afternoon long in what should be a really entertaining football game. We move Boston College taking on Virginia. Guys, I've got BC -3 in this game. And it more so has to do with the fact, like, I think Virginia is the worst team in Power 5. I think you could actually argue Virginia is the worst team in Power 5. They've got real problems. They've got real issues. I mean, and Boston College has at least showed signs of life, right? I know this game is on the road for the Eagles, but I love BC to cover here, man. I have no faith in Virginia at any point to do anything. So give me Boston College -3. I absolutely love this play. We go to Michigan, going on the road to take on Marcus Satterfield and the Nebraska Cornhusker. Guys, to hell with Marcus Satterfield. Unfortunately, that means to hell with Nebraska. Michigan -18. They are going to pound the Nebraska Cornhuskers. How's Nebraska going to score, guys? How's Nebraska going to score? I love Michigan here. Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy, they will have their way. I think this is kind of one of those ho-hum blowout victories for Michigan. I just don't see Nebraska having any answer, any way to keep up. And you know what? any chance I get to bet against Marcus Satterfield, guys, at this point, I'm taking it. I'm taking it. Flat out. Bottom line. Give me the Wolverines to cover the 18-point spread. They win that game by 3 touchdowns or more. We go to the Plains, Georgia and Auburn. I've got the under 47 in this football game. It's a low total for sure. But I don't see, guys, I don't see how Auburn is going to move the football at all against Georgia. Like, I could see this being a 34-3 final, 31-3. Like, I don't know how Auburn gets in the end zone here. I do not know how Auburn gets in the end zone. They have no quarterback. The running game is just okay. The offense has been anemic all year outside of against very much lesser than competition. And I think Georgia wants to show people, right? Hey, we're still here. We're still here. We're still the kings of college football. We're still that team, right? I think Georgia wants to do that. Spoiler, I think they will do that. I think they will dominate Auburn. Auburn does not have the horses in the trenches to keep up. Love the under here. I think it's, and I could see Auburn, guys, weird things happen right in Jordan-Hare. I could see Auburn maybe early throwing a couple punches, throwing a couple jabs, keeping Georgia in check, right? The Dogs have started out really, really slow in games. So I think it could be somewhat of a sloppy game, but I don't see any way this thing goes over the total. I love Georgia-Auburn under 47 in this football game. LSU and Ole Miss. It's the opposite story in Oxford, guys. I got the over 63.5. I think both of these offenses, I think both of these quarterbacks are going to flourish on Saturday night. Jaden Daniels against that Ole Miss defense. And then Jackson Dart, guys, against an LSU secondary. You saw what KJ Jefferson did to him. I think he's going to continue to do his thing. I think Lane Kiffin and company, I think they're going to bounce back in a big way. I think they want to make a statement at home. And I think LSU going to go jab for jab, punch for punch. Hey, now they got the running game going with Logan Diggs, getting him balling out, getting him rolling, if you will. I think there's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks in this one. Again, a pair of great quarterbacks, a pair of great offenses, a pair of great offensive minds. Defense will be optional. Defense will be optional in Oxford. Over 63.5, LSU and Ole Miss. We move to Notre Dame, and this is actually where College Game Day is going. Notre Dame taking on the Duke Blue Devils. Guys, I think Duke is a great story. I know they got College Game Day first time in Durham. I think that's awesome. Give me Sam Hartman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to bounce back from that heartbreaking loss against Ohio State and cover the 5.5. I don't think they're going to let Ohio State beat them twice. And I think Duke is a really nice story, a really good program. Riley Leonard at quarterback. Like, they are doing some great things. But I'm riding with Sam Hartman and the talent that Notre Dame has. I think they come in. They're going to want to make a statement. Again, I think the best way to get over a heartbreaking loss is a big-time win. And I think Notre Dame's going to get that. I think Notre Dame will cover the 5.5. I think Sam Hartman has a big day through the air. I think it'll be a game early. I think it's a game at halftime, but I think Notre Dame pulls away in this one. They flex their muscles. I think they will cover the 5.5 to spoil the first ever College Game Day trip to Durham. We move to Knoxville. And this might, guys, be my favorite play of the weekend. I really, truly, genuinely, this might be my favorite play. South Carolina and Tennessee. The over 61. And I don't understand how this number hasn't moved. I genuinely don't, because I don't see either defense getting a stop in this game hardly at all. I think both quarterbacks are going to have big days. I mean, guys, let's first look from the Tennessee perspective. Have they clicked on all cylinders? Absolutely not. Have they hit all their big plays, their explosives? Absolutely not. But, guys, you cannot sit here and tell me that Josh Heupel is not sitting there licking his chops watching that film from what Mississippi State and Tulu Griffin did to South Carolina. You can even go back to the UNC film When Drake May had time, the way he was able to pick that secondary apart, guys. And then on the South Carolina side, you got a quarterback in Spencer Rattler that's playing better than anybody, I'd say, right now in college football. Certainly better than anybody in the SEC. Xavier Legette is a one-man wrecking crew that can't be stopped. Now you got a running game to complement it. Now you've got Trey Knox at the tight end position. He finally got a touchdown. Maybe he's coming along. Hey, you're getting Amarian Brown most likely, hopefully back from injury. Eddie Lewis, your other weapons on the outside, Omega Blake, if you will. Maybe Nicholas Harbor emerges in this one. I think it's going to be a lot of offense. That's putting it lightly. And here's a fun fact for you, by the way, guys, that supports this. The over in this series, has cashed in 4 straight meetings between South Carolina and Tennessee. Over 61. It is a no-brainer. The over will cash. Yet again, I'm expecting a lot of points Saturday night in a fun back-and-forth contest at Neyland Stadium. And guys, finally, and this is one of the hottest teams in college football. And I'm riding with them and their quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. Washington goes on the road in a late-night West Coast game to Arizona. I am hammering Washington minus 18 here for the simple fact that I believe in Michael Penix Jr. I think he's a real, true, legitimate Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, and I think they're going to have a freaking field day, guys. You saw what Mississippi State did. Yes, they won that turnover battle 5-1, but that secondary is susceptible. I think Michael Penix Jr. and that offense, they're going to have a field day with Arizona. You can talk about the environment, what have you. I don't think it'll matter. I think they get a big, big win on the road, and Michael Penix Jr. continues his Heisman campaign with another big performance. So, guys, finally, my Week 5 gambling picks, they look like this. Southern Cal, Colorado, over 73.5. Boston College, -3. Michigan, -18. UGA and Auburn, the under 47. LSU, Ole Miss, over 63.5. Notre Dame, -5.5. South Carolina and Tennessee, over 61. And Washington, -18. Guys, that being said, let's jump into another quick break. On the other side, I'll lock in my keys to victory, what South Carolina must do in order to beat the Tennessee Volunteers and move to 3-2 on the season. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars. And there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. Let me point this out, by the way, guys. Next weekend, of course, is the bye week. There will be some changes to the schedule for that week. We will not go live all 5 days during the week because, of course, there is no South Carolina game that weekend because of the bye week. But I will let you guys know exactly what the schedule is. What the content is going to be. Of course, we got our guests that we want to cram in there and make sure we get them in there, get their thoughts and feedback on things. And of course, it'll still be a big weekend of SEC football, but a good chance there will be somewhat of a shakeup to the schedule next weekend. So wanted to make you all aware of that. With the bye week, it's crazy, guys, that we've already gotten to the bye week. Like, honestly, it's wild that we've already gotten to this point, but here we are. So anyways, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. With that being said, a massive showdown at Neyland Stadium as the Gamecocks take on Tennessee. What must South Carolina do to secure victory against the Volunteers? I've got three things specifically that I think if the Gamecocks can do each of these three, there's a good chance we look up at that scoreboard and a smile comes to our faces. My first key to victory is this. You hear this a lot, so I wanted to list it and explain it. But you hear, get the Vols off schedule. You got to get Tennessee off schedule. Well, what does that mean? Because I hear that a lot too. And you think about Tennessee offensively and what they want to do, right? They love going up tempo. I mean, up tempo is their thing. That's how they operate, and that's what makes them successful, right? They get defenses in positions where they get them on their heels, and they're moving so quick. These quick scoring drives, these quick scoring plays, these explosives, if you will. Well, here's how South Carolina gets Tennessee off schedule. Number one, you win first down and you slow down the running game. Because one of the things, and people just think about the passing game and, oh, Joe Milton, and he's got to throw it downfield. He's got to do this, that, whatever. That's a big part. But part of being on schedule in that offense is getting 5 or 6 a pop in the running game, getting 5 or 6 on first down. Now you're in 2nd and 4. Now you're in 2nd and 3, right? Now there's a whole different amount of different ways you can go versus if you're 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, then you're 3rd and long. That is getting off schedule, just disrupting the rhythm. If I had to really boil it down to it, what is getting an offense off schedule? It is disrupting the flow and the rhythm of how that offense wants to operate, right? We're expecting a shootout. We're expecting a lot of points, and I may be wrong, but I don't see any reason why this would not be a higher scoring contest. But for South Carolina, it's about getting the Volunteers off schedule, getting them behind the sticks, making Joe Milton work, making Joe Milton think, getting him in some uncomfortable situations, and slowing down the run game, not allowing them to work in that high tempo, that up tempo. Because guys, you think about the last time that South Carolina went to Knoxville, right? Tennessee was able to get the football in the perimeters. They could run the football. They were getting in 2nd and 3rd and shorts. And I mean, it was a bunch of pitch and catch. And before you knew it, South Carolina was down 28-0, 35-0, right? South Carolina's got to be able to win those early downs, slow down the running game, get Joe Milton a little bit uncomfortable, and just get them out of their flow and off their rhythm and get the Volunteers off schedule. My second key to victory is this, and it feels very no-brainer. It feels very obvious, if you will, but keep Spencer Rattler upright. And the reason that's such a major key in this game, guys, you look at Tennessee. They love getting after the quarterback, and they are very good at it. 16 sacks through 4 games for the Volunteers. Right? They've got an array of guys up front who have been really, really good for them. Multiple sack guys all across the board. We heard all offseason, Tennessee is upgraded defensively. They're much better. And, although they lost that one game to Florida, they have looked the part for the most part. That Tennessee front 7 has been solid to this point. We'll find a lot more about them on Saturday night. So 16 sacks through 4 games for Tennessee. Then you look at the South Carolina side. 17 sacks allowed at this point. Now, I understand one of those was, some of those numbers are aided by a 9-sack performance in week 1 by North Carolina. But, guys, even in the win against Mississippi State, Spencer Rattler was sacked 4 times. So this is an offensive line that is very much still a work in progress. And you think about, too, guys, South Carolina has played a road SEC game this season. And Sanford Stadium is a loud, hostile environment. And I'm not trying to cause an argument or a fight or, what have you in the comments or anything like that because, there's a lot of ego and pride and we have the loudest stadium. This stadium's the loudest. But just based off the simple fact of, what's riding on this game, the context of this rematch, the context of, revenge or what have you, and this game being at night at Neyland Stadium, this is going to be by far the most raucous environment that South Carolina has played in. So making sure you're on the same page, right? The offensive line, making sure all your checks get to everybody and making sure you're playing as a unit, playing cohesively. Because Tennessee has got the dudes up front to make your life very uncomfortable and make Spencer Rattler's life very uncomfortable. The way Spencer Rattler's playing, guys, I'll tell you this. The way I view it, anytime I see Spencer Rattler get a clean pocket, I'm expecting a big play. Anytime I see him have the ability to set his feet and deliver a throw, I'm expecting a completion at this point. I'm expecting a positive play for South Carolina because that's the level that Spencer Rattler's on right now. The only thing that can get Spencer Rattler out of flow, out of rhythm, out of this zone that he's locked in right now is an immense amount of pressure. And you know Tennessee is going to be bringing the pressure. They're going to be dialing it up. They're probably going to put their DBs on an island, if you will. They're probably going to try to get there with more than a couple guys. Like they're going to be sending the blitz. Tennessee's going to be aggressive defensively. If you can keep Spencer Rattler upright, I don't see any reason why he cannot toast that secondary again. I don't think Tennessee is an elite secondary by any means. I think they're better than last year, but I mean, that's not saying a whole lot. So you keep Spencer Rattler upright. I think you give yourself a major opportunity in this football game to have a big-time outing from QB1. And finally, guys, my final key to victory, I was just talking about the raucous environment, the crowd, the energy. Quiet the noise. Quiet the noise. That's my final key to the game. Quiet the noise. On the road, you want to start fast. You want to do everything you can to take the crowd out of it because you know, right? You know that Tennessee crowd on Saturday night is probably going to be unlike any other road environment South Carolina walks into. I mean, I'll tell you this. I'll go a step further. If you're a Gamecock fan making that trip to Knoxville, God bless you. I respect you and your bravery because it is going to be, I don't see it being a friendly environment. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating it just a touch. But it's going to be as hostile as any environment South Carolina will step into this season. They're going to be loud from the jump. They're going to be loud early, and Tennessee fans will bring the noise until they don't have a reason to. And this is a fan base in Tennessee that I think is they're kind of fragile right now. I think Tennessee fans are somewhat fragile. If Spencer Rattler and company, Gamecocks defense, can go out there, start quickly, take them out of the game, if you will, it is going to make things much easier, much simpler. Like what you did against Georgia, that's the game plan. That's exactly it. Punch them in the mouth. Be the aggressor. Start fast. Take Neyland Stadium and that environment and that atmosphere out of the ballgame because you know they're going to show up. You know they're going to be raucous. You know they're going to be ready for the Gamecocks. Eliminate them early, right? You help out a young offensive line, some youngsters, and Big Trim Abalade and Trovon Bowe with these other guys. Help them out by eliminating that crowd, eliminating that noise, and silencing, for the most part, that environment. So again, guys, my 3 keys to victory against Tennessee. Get the Vols off schedule offensively. Get them out of their rhythm. Get them out of their groove. My second key, keep Spencer Rattler upright. Hey, he got time to throw. He's got time to set his feet. Good things are going to happen, but you got to keep him on his feet. And finally, quiet the noise. What you did at Georgia, copy-paste. Copy-paste. Get off to that type of start. Take the environment, neutralize Neyland Stadium and how it can help Tennessee. You do those 3 things, I see South Carolina having a great opportunity to pull off the upset Saturday night in Knoxville. Guys, that being said, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll get my good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South and Saturday Football Uncensored on our show. All that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho, Dougie Ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we're back here on this Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. We now await our good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. He joins us here on this Tuesday. Really excited to chat with him. All things SEC football, looking ahead to a jam-packed slate in week 5. Of course, guys, do not forget tomorrow we'll do position unit comparisons. We'll start diving into top storylines, key matchups, all that good stuff. And then on Thursday, we're now dropping predictions Thursdays instead of Fridays. I'll lock in my picks for the SEC slate, as well as South Carolina's game against Tennessee. But in the meantime, of course, like I mentioned, he joins us every single week. Appreciate him being flexible with his time this week. Our good friend, Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, what's going on, my man? Great to see you once again. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Had a fantastic week. Weekend was great. The games were great, so it was a lot of fun.
It was a fun weekend of college football for sure. Hey, first thing, I'm going to throw you a curveball to start out. What did you think of Oregon and their trolling of Colorado before, during, and after the beatdown?
So I host a podcast called Saturday Football Uncensored, and I'm not great at censoring myself or filtering out things. So I'll just be honest with how I felt about all of it. I'm so fucking tired of hearing about not Colorado. The Colorado thing is a really great story, and Dion, what he's doing is impressive and awesome to watch, and it's really great. What people in the media have turned this into is so fucking stupid, and it's so annoying, and I'm so tired of it because, like, Dan Lanning did what all coaches do, and that's motivate his team and talk his shit before the game. And then he backed it up on the field. And, I don't think that performance was indicative of Dan Lanning trying to shut up Deion Sanders. I think Dan Lanning was tired of hearing about Colorado and all the attention it was getting. I watched a live interview with him on Friday night where he was asked 5 questions and 3 of them were about Deion Sanders. And it's like you're sitting here with a top 10 team and a potential Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, and you're going to answer questions about a team that was 1-11 last year because they beat TCU and Colorado State. Like, get the fuck out of here! I'm just tired of hearing about it. So I thought it was awesome from Oregon all the way around, and I thought Deion handled the whole thing with class too because he did a good job of just saying like, "Hey, hats off to him." And then I loved what he said afterwards about better get me now because this is the lowest we're going to be.
Yeah, Chris, I think you can really tell who's been in a locker room and who hasn't because I heard some of the Dan Lanning comments also, and it's like some of these people would be horrified if they heard what's said on a week in, week out basis, things used for motivation, what's said about opposing coaches and players, and what's said behind closed doors. I think some people would be somewhat surprised. Either way, though, we moved to the SEC, Chris, like you mentioned, a jam-packed slate, my man. Let's start with Alabama. The Crimson Tide bounced back in a big way. 24-10 win. I took Bama -7. I just felt like it's one thing to beat Alabama. It's another to, for Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin to go in there and effectively end what would feel like their season or in their hopes of, their goals, what have you. What were your thoughts on Alabama and Ole Miss? Obviously, that was sort of a mistake-ridden first half. It was at 7-6 at halftime, and Bama pulls away. Jalen Miller, I thought, obviously establishing he is QB1. But what were your biggest takeaways from that game and I guess encouraging signs that you saw from Alabama?
Yeah, there's a lot of things they did. There's a lot of things they did that was bad. There's a lot of things they did that was really, really good. I thought it was great to see the way they the resiliency of the team and how much they fought. I was really impressed by that because you look at the first half and it was like, man, like this team. I was texting a buddy of mine and I was just so frustrated because it's like every time they do something well, it seems like they do something stupid. You had your 5th touchdown called back from a penalty in 3 games. You have even in the third quarter when you go up by 10, you have a kickoff and you immediately pin them deep inside the 8-yard line and you get a targeting penalty that not only gives them 15 extra yards, then you eject your third-string running back who was seeing like some time in that game. I could focus on the negatives all for a while because there was a lot of them. I'm not even going to get started on getting a blocked punt at the 1-yard line and deciding to run out of shotgun when you've had issues with the snap all year because that was unfucking real to watch. I was like, Bama had 3 trips in the red zone in the first half, and you had the first one went for -10 yards and a field goal. The second one ended in an interception. The third one went for -23 yards and another field goal. And I was about to lose my mind. From the resiliency standpoint, you had Jalen Miller throw an inexcusable interception in the red zone, and it was something that is absolutely inexcusable, like I said. But after that, 9 of 11 passing, 82% completion percentage, 14.5 yards per attempt. I mean, he's putting up Spencer Rattler numbers, dude. I mean, we're talking about it was really good to watch. It was really good to watch. No interceptions. Obviously took a big hit and threw a touchdown to Jalen Hale. And that was another part too. You saw some guys fill in on offense and defense that were newcomers. One at linebacker, Jihad Campbell. The name scares me a lot, but I don't know if I'm naming my kid Jihad anytime soon, but I thought it was a really, really good win. And the fact that the defense was so suffocating, They did it on special teams as well. You've hit 20 straight field goals from Will Reichert. I thought it was very, very promising. And I said this after they lost to Texas. Who else on the schedule do you look at and it's like, that's an automatic loss? And A&M is going to be really tough because you have to go on the road. But they're probably going to be without Connor Wigman. And then you talk about like getting Tennessee, who's definitely beatable at home, and LSU, who has struggled with teams like Arkansas, and they're beatable. So we'll see.
Yeah, to your point, Chris, I think every team in the SEC certainly has their flaws, and I think to some varying degrees, we've seen those from every team in the SEC. Ole Miss, really quickly, we all like Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Do you feel like at Ole Miss, the ceiling, though, is that, say, 9 or 10 wins? Like, I just – it feels like that's kind of what Ole Miss football is. And, like, that's not a bad thing. I think a lot of programs should strive to be like what Lane Kiffin has built. But, I mean, would you say they've hit their ceiling under Lane Kiffin, kind of where, plateaued where they are currently?
Let's do this together because this is a fun little stat I want to look up with you. You said, is their stat 9 or 10 wins, right? Or their ceiling 9 or 10 wins, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how many times in program history they've had more than 10 wins?
0.
0. So, yeah, the ceiling is that. And I think that, like, I think that there's room for growth for every team. And I think that you can go into the portal and get some guys. Sometimes I wonder if Kiffin knows he can go get other players besides just quarterbacks, because for a while there it was like he was only bringing in quarterbacks, both in recruiting and in the portal. I think they're a good football team. I think that they have the chance when they're coached well and when they're like focused to go do some damage. You saw it in 2021 when they had Matt Corral at quarterback. That was a great team. That was a really, really good football team. But really, like, you look at it now and it's like, man, like I don't want my coach. I remember saying this when Mark Richt was at Georgia, and I caught a lot of flack for it then. One thing I loved about Saban versus Richt was I knew on Sunday mornings Richt was going to be in church, and that's great. My mom's a pastor. Hats off to you. But I know Saban's going to be watching game tape. So on Saturday morning, watching Lane Kiffin tweet about him going to fucking Pilates, I was excited that the coach that I had on the sideline was going to not be doing that. And so I think that, I hate to say it, as long as he's there and his maturity level, I think that has hit a ceiling. I think his maturity has hit a ceiling. And I wonder how far they can go with that being how he handles and approaches the program.
Chris, South Carolina got what felt like a much needed win against Mississippi State, getting their first SEC win of the season. Spencer Rattler continues his hot play. Xavier Legette making an argument for being the best wide receiver in college football. Secondary play was optional on both sides, by the way, because Will Rogers threw for 487 yards. The Gamecocks got a big win. Does your opinion of them change all that much after that W? I know Mississippi State's not exactly considered one of the top-tier teams in the SEC. So your overall thoughts on just South Carolina's win? Again, one they had to have, but does it change the perception a whole lot?
Well, so first off, what I'll say is I think that one thing I've been wrong about is Spencer Rattler is absolutely the best quarterback in the SEC right now. Spencer Rattler has been outstanding for that team and that program, and he's done it in every game. He's not like – you even look, I think he was 83% completion percentage in the North Carolina game, and a game where I think some of the stuff gets lost in the numbers because the stats, like, just in the way sports fans are nowadays in general, like we want to see home runs, we want to see 104 mile an hour fastballs, we want to see all that kind of shit. Like Spencer Rattler doesn't have as many touchdown passes going into this week, but I mean, Jesus, man, if you go up against a Georgia defense and you're 16 of 18, you start out a game this week. I mean, he was putting up Steven Garcia numbers, man. 18 to 20 has given me PTSD all over again since 2010. Like it was a really, really great job from him. And he's doing it without arguably his best receiver. And he's making the wide receiver 2 one of the best receivers in the country. Like it's awesome to watch. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that still scares me about this team because the offensive line, defensive line are a concern. And we've seen what they've, given up with sacks wise and stuff like that. Especially on the O-line. But the secondary, that was surprising. That's been really, if you think about it, not even just from an individual standpoint, because it's definitely been a strength in an individual standpoint, but the secondary seems like it's been pretty talented at the very least at South Carolina for the last 5 years at minimum. And to watch what happened with Will Rogers, and Will Rogers is a great quarterback, but to watch what happened with him in a primarily running offense, it was concerning to say the least.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Gamecock fans, Chris, would agree with you. I mean, again, it's the secondary, to your point, has been the strength of this defense over the first 2 seasons, the Shane Beamer era. And I think this year I'm Chris. I'm ready to accept. I don't think this defense is very good. I don't know how else to say it. I think the Gamecocks are going to have to outscore people to win games. I think they're going to have to. And to your point of what's scary, they're going to have to get that level of play from Spencer Rattler. And I'm just concerned when he not even when he plays bad, like when he becomes human, can they still win? You know what I mean? Like that's my greatest concern. Chris, looking at the rest of week 4 really quickly, I want to move into these week 5 games. What jumped out to you? I mean, Texas A&M takes down Auburn, Kentucky and Mizzou stay undefeated. The LSU Arkansas game, quietly the game of the weekend, you could argue. Anything in particular jump out, like major takeaways from the week 4 slate?
Yeah, just kind of going around it from SEC play in general. Like, I mean, Arkansas showed a lot of fight, and it was really fun to watch. That's always been a great rivalry game. I hate the fact they played it in September, but I mean, that's always been a great rivalry game. And you get to see KJ Jefferson at his best. I would have liked to see him kind of pull away with the win. I think it's you can't pull against KJ Jefferson in general. I don't think any just casual fan is doing that. But it was a great game. It was a great environment. Death Valley was rocking. It was a lot of fun to watch. Mizzou's legit. That was one of the things I meant to tweet this out and I didn't, but the two main takeaways I had, the two certainties that I had, I don't know if Bama is going to run the table. I don't know if Georgia is good enough to win the national championship. I don't know who Tennessee is in general, but the two certainties that I had from this weekend is that Mizzou should be a ranked team because they are a top 25 team, maybe a top 20 team in the country right now that we're just not talking about because it's Mizzou. And that Spencer Rattler is the best quarterback in the SEC right now. And I think that both those things showed why they're very, very real. And at this point of the season, two factual things that I feel very certain about. And I think the Mizzou and Brady Cook's been awesome. He's been awesome to watch. You talk about going into the season where people thought that was going to be kind of a weak point for that team, especially that offense. It might be what limited them from winning games. And he's been incredible all season long. The other stuff, I mean, A&M and Auburn, I didn't know this. This is an incredible stat that I found. I mean, they had 56 yards passing combined on Saturday, which is terrible. And especially in a Hugh Freeze offense where Bo Wallace was a 3,000-yard passer twice. Let's not forget that. But this is their 5th straight game against a Power 5 team where they've had less than 100 yards passing, which is almost impossible to do. So that was not great. And I think with A&M, you got to feel better about them, especially with who they get at home. They get Bama at home. We'll see what they can do with Tennessee and LSU on the road. But that's still a very dangerous team, especially when they have Stewart at receiver.
Chris, let's jump into this week 5 slate. Tons of great SEC action. I want to dive right into the game on Saturday night. Obviously, the Tennessee Volunteers hosting South Carolina. First, let me ask you this, because we hear all the time about the revenge factor. It's a revenge game. We're that's going to get played out leading into this football game because of 63-38, what happened last year at Williams-Brice Stadium. Do you buy revenge factor at all? Does it mean anything in games like this?
Have you met anyone from Tennessee? Have you met any of them?
I've been to Knoxville, believe it or not. Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. I believe in it for one, and I definitely believe in it in Tennessee. And here's the thing too, and this is one of the reasons why Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football, is that it's hard to motivate 18 to 22-year-old kids for this long. I mean, you played college sports, you get it. It's hard to keep kids focused and motivated for that long. And so anything you can do to get a leg up or, an arm up in the competition, whatever you want to say, I think you take advantage of that. And I think Tennessee, there is a very real huge chip on their shoulder because they used to be they have been throughout the entire history of the SEC, the second best program in the conference. It's Bama and Tennessee, and it always has been. And, they won that title in 98. And then you just talk about just disappointment, even in these small little blips of when they've kind of, peaked and been in the top 10, Josh Dobbs year and all that kind of stuff. It's ended horribly. And all the coaches they brought in last year was great. And I think that this year, I don't think there's a game on their schedule that they have more anger and venom towards than maybe Georgia than this game. And because deservingly so, they got ran out of the building and laughed at from the country because all we heard from Tennessee fans nonstop was, and I don't know what happens if Hooker stays in that game and doesn't get injured, but that happens. And so I don't know if there's a team that has been more frustrated with an outcome than Tennessee was in the South Carolina game last year. I mean, because they got embarrassed against an offense that had sputtered for a lot of the year and a quarterback that had sputtered for a lot of the year, and they got embarrassed kind of like having done to them what they'd done to others throughout the season. They ran out of fireworks. They ran out of fucking fireworks. I can't. It's the funniest thing that has happened in college football, and I don't even know how long. It was incredible.
A result none of us will forget anytime soon, Chris Marler, again, 63-38 last year. Spencer Rattler obviously is back for more. I think what's really interesting, Chris, in this football game, it's a pair of fan bases that, from what I've seen on social media, obviously the back and forth, the jabbing, the trash talk, but Tennessee fans are kind of feeling insecure about their football team. South Carolina fans are kind of feeling the same way because I think there's a lot of Gamecock Nation that expected that Mississippi State game to be a blowout. And so there's some things that are worrisome. And like, what do you think it all means? I'll tell you this first things, Chris. I love the over 61. I think defense is going to be optional. I don't think anybody's stopping anybody. Your overall thoughts on how this football game plays out. If you want to lock in a prediction, fine. But do you think it's the blowout that Tennessee faithful are hoping for?
So I think that if they get up, they have the chance to do that. I don't know if Joe Milton is able to play mistake-free football for that long, for 60 straight minutes. I know Spencer Rattler can. I've seen him do it multiple times. Like, I know he can. I don't know if he has enough weapons around him to do that. Because here's the thing, too. And I said this in the beginning of the season, and I still kind of stand by it, even though the teams they've played have kind of benefited to this stat. But the thing that we don't talk about with Tennessee nearly enough is that their front seven is really, really good. They get after the quarterback. After week 2, they led the country in sacks, and they led the SEC, I believe, in sacks and tackles for loss. They've been fantastic up front on the defense side of the ball. And all we ever talk about with Tennessee usually is just the offense, especially with the Josh Heupel coach team. So the front seven on that defense has been really good. Now they are shaky. Like Carolina is going to score. Carolina is going to score. And I think that Tennessee, what I love from this more than anything is the confidence you have to have if you're South Carolina going into this. Sure, you barely beat, if you want to say it, you barely beat Mississippi State. What did you beat by 7? It was like 37-30. Well, the line was 6. Let's all calm down, okay? Like the line, like Vegas is not wrong. You say it, I say it all the time. They don't build like a fucking $1 billion hotels in the middle of the desert, like for being wrong. So yeah, it seemed like that was probably spot on with what I guess Sharp thought was going to happen. I think that this is a team that is beatable. Going into Knoxville is going to be really tough. It's going to be the whole thing with the black jerseys, and it's going to be an electric environment. I know that Spencer Rattler is not going to be fazed by that. I don't know if everyone is not going to be fazed by that. And he cannot win this game. This game will not be won with just Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette. It just won't. It just won't. It can't happen. So, the secondary scares me, especially what we saw last week. But Joe Milton is not Will Rogers, and he's not as accurate a passer as Will Rogers. So you got to hope that you win the turnover battle for one. You can avoid costly mistakes, like obviously from your offense. But the other thing is they're going to have shots downfield for Tennessee. You got to hope they miss them. I think it's a close game, for most of it. I don't see it being a blowout. I could see Tennessee pulling away late, kind of not similar to what we saw with the Georgia game, because that's a different animal. But it's a tough environment to play in. I wish this game was in South Carolina again for Carolina.
To your point, Chris, about keeping Spencer Rattler upright and just the front seven of Tennessee, that's one of my keys, because you look at the stats. Tennessee, 16 sacks to this point. South Carolina has allowed 17 sacks.
Yeah.
So it may not bode well. Spencer Rattler can't do a lot of damage when he's on his back. Shane Beamer against Josh Heupel. I mean, this has kind of become like a fun, low-key, a fun rivalry. What do you think it's a bigger game for? Because as you mentioned, Tennessee, what they want to do as a program, they had a great season last year, but Shane Beamer ruined it. And I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there, dare I say, who hates Shane Beamer more than Tennessee fans. Like, they can't stand that guy. So Kirby. To lose to him again, maybe Kirby. Okay, maybe Kirby. But when you look at these two coaches, these two programs, both are fighting for this SEC East hierarchy. Like, who do you think needs it more?
Tennessee. Because here's the thing. I've said this for a while. South Carolina feels like they're playing with house money. And I know that the expectations are there for the program and the fan base wants them to win. And I get all that. And it's good to have those expectations. But if we're being honest, think about the expectations that are in Knoxville. You won 11 games last year. You beat Bama. They printed a fucking commemorative book in middle October, in the middle of October after beating Bama. They did it for the whole season. Like, if you think expectations aren't tempered there, then like I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I think, and I tell you what, Tim Fulbright, I don't know who he is. He brings up a really good point in the commentary. He says, "What teams have they been getting those sacks against?" They had 11 against their in their first 2 games against Virginia and whoever else they played.
Austin P.
And Austin P, right? We're like Austin Poop. Boom, nailed it. So I think that like that whole thing, and then you have like whoever they played last week, like they haven't played anybody, right? Besides Florida, and they got their ass beat by Florida badly. So I think it's a bigger game for Josh Heupel because if you leave the month of September in a season where you look at that schedule coming into the season, and you're like, man, we're obviously going to be 5-0 going into here. I don't think any Tennessee fans thought they were going to lose to A&M, to Bama, to like anyone before Georgia for sure. And you're looking at possibly leaving the month of September 3-2 with 2 losses in your division and out of that race, then you're in trouble. So I think this is like, I don't want to say a must win for Heupel, but for them to go anywhere close to where their goals are for this season, yeah, they can't lose. And I think again with Carolina, I hate to say it because like it's not like the season's over. You're 2-2, but like I don't think a lot of rational fans for Carolina were thinking we're going to win the SEC East and the SEC and go compete for this, and this. And Tennessee fans fully expected they were going to be competing for a division title, an SEC title, going to hopefully the playoff, and they had a Heisman Trophy quarterback in their what do you call it, in their QB room, and that was like a month ago. So
you make valid points, Marler, as
I
you always do,
man. I'll tell you that
as you always do. Now, as we look at the rest of the SEC slate, Chris, for this week, I know the phrase "separation Saturday." I feel like that's not normally used until we get till late October or something like that. But it kind of feels like one in the SEC this week when you just talk about the hierarchy and we do these power rankings, and it really does feel true that 3 through 13 or what have you, you could just kind of shake up and put in the order. And on any given Saturday, you could be right. But, Kentucky, Florida, and Lexington, that A&M Arkansas game in Arlington, even Ole Miss and LSU. I think we're going to learn a lot in these football games. What are you most looking forward to from matchups? Like those are 3 games to me that feel very 50-50 right now.
Yeah. So the LSU Ole Miss game is going to be very interesting because that's a game last year I thought Ole Miss would roll in.
Another game I have the over in, by the way.
Yeah, I like that too.
Love the over.
They made LSU's entire season turned around after that game, right? Like you're talking about like coming off like a few weeks prior to that where you get boat raced at home by Tennessee, and then you talk about like by the end of the month you're back in contention for the SEC West and hopefully an SEC title and all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be really interesting to see, especially with how Ole Miss can recover from what happened last week. I'm very interested to see that game. Auburn, Georgia is my favorite rivalry in college football ever. It always will be. Being from Atlanta, the fact that first game was played in 1892 in Piedmont Park, and there's so much history and tradition. And as a Bama fan, like one of those teams has to lose. Usually that game was played ahead of the Bama Auburn game, so somebody was going to get hurt. Like probably, I hate how that sounds, but you talk not hurt, but like you get beat up in that game, right? Like it's like that game was like when Bama and LSU would play, and people would be like physical the entire game. So it's like, man, you're limping into the next week, and that was always great. It's just a fun rivalry. Georgia's won like 15 of the last 18, but I was surprised.
On a side note, Chris, why is the spread 14.5 in that one?
The next sentence out of my mouth was going to be, but the spread is 14. And I don't get it. But I love it. So like, I hope Vegas knows something, and it's come down. It was at like 15.5. I was watching something a buddy of mine, Graham Coffey, tweeted. And it was like, he's like, this makes no sense. This is 15.5. It feels like you want to jump all over Georgia. And here's the thing about Vegas too. When the line stinks, like something usually is up. Like if like you're not going to make free money off of Vegas, right? So it's like 15.5. I was like, that seems weird. Dude, within like 2 hours, it was down to 14. So somebody knows something. I don't know. Maybe Carson Beck is going to get in trouble for saying some shit on Snapchat.
When it's too good to be true, it normally is. That's how Vegas works.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's with dating and in college football. So there you go. No, so I think with the whole thing with that game, which would be a lot of fun to watch. Kentucky, Florida is going to be a lot of fun. I think Florida is. We'll see after this weekend because I'm on the roller coaster with them, right? Like Utah was tough, Tennessee was awesome. Last week, you're like they scored one offensive touchdown against Charlotte and fake Sam Pittman as their head coach. Like it was just like, what is happening here? So I think that like that game, I want to pick Florida, but I think it'll be a lot of fun to see who wins that game. And it's another game too. It's another weekend too. It's like there's good football on all day. Bama's on at like fucking 9 p.m. Ugh, Saban after dark. I want no part of that. I want no part of that.
Does that one worry you at all from the Bama perspective? I mean, it seems just if Will Rogers has all of a sudden got it clicking, like does that
grow up?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, here's the thing. Sure. Like I'm not trying to. I will say that nothing ever good happens in Starkville for Alabama. It's where Tua got hurt. There's always some shit that happens in Starkville, and I hate it. I hate going to Starkville. It's a miserable place to go. There's fucking nothing there. It's like I hate it. And something bad always happens. So barring injury, I don't see it being a huge, huge concern. Here's the other thing too. I thought this set out all the time. Alabama has allowed one touchdown total to Mississippi State in the last 3 years combined. And it came in the last play of the game last year. So I think they're going to be fine. And I think you talk about how good the defense was. I think they might struggle early on offense, but the defense for Bama is really, really good. And I think that they're going to be able to be fine. So
a jam-packed slate of college football once again, especially in the SEC. Chris, last thing before we get you out of here. Has anything surprised you to this point in the college football season? Any preconceived notions, predictions, thoughts on the season, thoughts on a certain team, thoughts on a player that you sit here now going into week 5, the month of October is about to approach and come upon us, and you're surprised by to this point?
Penn State is really good. Penn State's really, really good, and we're not talking enough about it. I don't know if you saw what they did to Iowa this weekend. I know it's an SEC show, but we cover national stuff on ours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They dominated them, right, for the most part. I checked on that game, and it looked pretty ugly. So.
Iowa had 76 total yards and 4 first downs. They got beat 31-0. They had 54.
An Iowa stat line right there.
Dude,
stat line.
But they put up 41 the week before. They had against Penn State. They had 54 total yards on their first 2 drives, and they had 22 the rest of the game. I think it was like 8 out of their 10 drives were 3 and outs and punts. They had 6 fumbles. But I'll also say Penn State is really, really good, and we just don't really talk enough about them. Love the Ohio State Notre Dame game last week. I do think Michigan is overrated. I think the thing that surprised me the most is this. There's a couple of confirmation bias things that I've enjoyed because I felt like this was going to happen for the season, and I didn't realize how accurate they might be. I think Texas is really good. What's happening in the Pac-12 is I know a lot of people don't take the Pac-12 seriously because of historical reasons. What's happening in the Pac-12 this year is special, and it's really, really fun to watch. And if you love college football, like I think all of us do, it's a really fun conference this year to watch. And it's not just Caleb Williams, and it's not just Dion, but Bo Nix being a Heisman contender, Cam Ward that no one's talking about up at Washington State. They've got 5 legitimate guys out there that could be Heisman Trophy winners, not just contenders at the QB position alone. It's awesome to watch. Michael Penix in Washington might be the best team in the country, and we're just not even talking about them. They're all outside the top 5. And I think that one thing that I look at with this season is I keep hearing this over and over, and I've even said it, I think, once or twice joking, but people keep saying, is anybody any good? Is anybody even any good? Because Georgia's got cracks in the foundation. Ohio State and Michigan struggled with Rutgers last week and threw 3 picks against Bowling Green. But you look outside the top 5 and you start looking at Florida State and what they've done with that resume, and Texas and Penn State and Oregon and Washington and all these teams that are hovering right around there. And it's like everyone's is good. Everyone's good. And any of those teams outside of the top 5 that we just kind of wanted to write in is they're going to be in the playoff. USC, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, they're going to be in the playoff. You look from 5 through 10 or 5 through 12, and there's so many teams that could still compete and win a national title. It's wide open. It's so much fun. This season has been so much fun so far, and I feel like it's only going to continue to be that way for the rest of the season.
And Chris, arguably the most fun part is that you didn't mention Clemson's name because they are officially out of it. Feels great.
Hold on, real quick.
Can
we talk about for a brief moment the fact that the kid who missed the field goal, his last name was Whites? Because if they would have won, if they would have won, the headline would have been Dabo and the Whites win this game. It would have been awesome.
Whoa. Those were the Dabo hackers, I think, just infiltrating our feed there. I think Dabo Sweeney has his. No, anyways, I thought what was funnier about that, though, was honestly the fact that Dabo Sweeney could have went to the portal and gotten an actual kicker, a guy that's kicked in college and kind of done it before. And that's why you lose. So It's funny how the world works.
Love
glad to know that bad things still happen to bad people. No, I'm kidding. Chris Marler, Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, remind folks where they can catch your show, when it drops, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so it's Saturday Football Uncensored. It's on Apple and Spotify and all platforms. We do a live show on all platforms and YouTube on Sunday nights with a call-in line from the day before and all that kind of stuff. We've got a bunch of videos, series, and things like that we're launching as well. But yeah, Saturday Football Uncensored is the name of the podcast. And then on Instagram and Twitter, all the updates like that. My name is Vern Funquist on there. And yeah, so we'll have all those, all the updates and live shows that come out every Sunday night and Wednesday as well.
Chris, you're the man. I appreciate it. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Great stuff from Chris Marler, Saturday Football Uncensored, Saturday Down South. Always a great conversation with him. Guys, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll close out the show in style here on this Tuesday. All that and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars. And there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars. Or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I want to say thank you to our good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored, for taking the time weekly to chat with us. Just wrapping things up, guys, here on this Tuesday. We do have a comment here in the Big Cock Club Discord, the TDC Questions channel, which is where you guys need to go if you have anything. Austin Gregory says, not so much talking about Hardesty's job status these days. Folks are losing sight of the team's biggest issue, focusing on Clayton White. I think folks are still pretty locked in on Montario Hardesty. I think Clayton White is catching a lot of heat. Why is that? I mean, I think that the numbers, the way they look right now, they don't help all that much. South Carolina being 14th in most major categories don't help all that much. We'll see if those numbers change. And I think as long as Mario Anderson is getting his play, I think if he's performing and he's being productive, I think you're going to feel the energy, against Montario Hardesty probably cool off a little bit, but I think most Gamecock fans are in agreement that a change does need to be made at the running back position. So, hopefully it's a situation in which South Carolina is able to, make adjustments defensively, and Clayton White is still DC next year, because that would mean South Carolina made the necessary improvements, and that, the Gamecocks feel confident in him being the leader of that group moving forwards. I don't think anybody actively wants Clayton White to fail, for him to no longer be the defensive coordinator, but folks react to what they see on the field, and when they see a bad defensive product, they go straight to the source, and that is Clayton White. So we shall see. I'm someone, again, guys, I don't really believe in, unless it's as bad as what Marcus Satterfield put on the field, I don't really believe in, in calling for coordinators' jobs or coaches' jobs, if you will, mid-season. Again, every situation is different, but I'm someone that I'll just say this: the defense has got to get better. The defense has got to improve. To be fair, by the way, I was really surprised with the defensive numbers against the run. South Carolina's done a much, much better job in stopping the run, but the numbers against the pass have been, nothing short of abysmal. And we knew that was a possibility, guys. And we talked all summer long about, you look at the front half of the schedule and the quarterbacks you're going to face and the high-flying offenses. And, college football is such a passing game, right? The game of football, it's such a passing game now that, you're not surprised to see it swing the other way, but it's almost like now South Carolina has a new problem. And so that secondary, which you feel like has talent, has got to step up and make plays, because if you do not, it could be a very, very long night in Knoxville for sure. So anyways, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much again for the continued love and support. Be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Also, guys, the podcast drops daily on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check us out there. And don't forget, guys, after the game on Saturday night, the A1 Air Quality Consultants post-game call-in show will take place. Again, it'll be immediately following Saturday night's action, as we'll live react to what happened at Neyland Stadium. Austin Gregory in the TDC Questions channel, Big Cock Club Discord, says this: which position group has disappointed you the most this year? The secondary, the tight end room? By far the secondary. I had very realistic expectations for the tight end room. Joshua Simon was a guy that came in, had flashy numbers at Western Kentucky, but I never thought he was going to be some all-SEC guy. I mean, it was a huge transition going from WKU to the SEC, and also the Gamecocks had other weapons. And then Trey Knox, guys, admittedly, Trey Knox is someone, again, that I had reasonable expectations for, because you talk to Arkansas folks, and they weren't that high on him. Like, they were not that high on him, right? So, I mean, Trey Knox, the guy I always thought could be a nice complimentary piece, but I never expected to be like a all SEC tight end, be this 600 or 700 yard receiver. Like I think some folks thought he'd be after the spring game. But the secondary, I thought, admittedly, guys, I'll say this. Admittedly, I was nervous. If you go back and look at my game-by-game predictions, by the way, you're going to see some very high scores. And I remember when I dropped those, people said, damn, Chris, you must be low on the defense. Like, what's up with the defense? Why is the defense doing? I was nervous about the defense all offseason because I felt like what you lost, you didn't necessarily get guys in to fill those voids. And, the secondary had question marks and the linebacker position was still kind of so-so. And, the front four was, what it was. So, admittedly, as I drop the mouse here, admittedly, I had concerns and had question marks about the defense. And I think I did a decent job of voicing those. But all of the question marks and all of the things that I was nervous about coming into the season, those things have been reaffirmed. They've been nothing but reaffirmed early in the season. And so hopefully South Carolina is able to improve. But I really think, guys, this is going to be a season for Gamecocks football where you're going to have to outscore your opponents to win. I mean, bottom line, point blank, I think this defense has real issues, has real holes. And I think that's just, when we look back on the 2023 season, I think that's kind of going to be kind of how the flow of the season went. Going to be very similar to 2014. You got a quarterback kind of fighting to combat and overcome a porous defense. We'll see if I'm wrong. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see what happens when the dust settles. Guys, again, thank you all so much. Make sure, again, you subscribe on YouTube, you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, and stay tuned to all the content bleeding out of the eyeballs. That being said, guys, we're out of here. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.